Okay, guys, this is a practice test 3. We're gonna try it out. All right. So you also need to have a formula sheet. I didn't have one, so I just have it on my iPad over here. But I probably won't go back and forth showing that. So, but this is a double angle formula. So I want you to rewrite the expression. So basically my angle is negative pi over 6. And so I have 2 sine of theta times cosine of theta. And that is equal to, using my formula sheet, sine of 2 theta. So that means I have sine of 2 times negative pi over 6, which would be the same thing as negative 2 pi over 6, which is the same thing as negative pi over 3. So I'm basically looking for sine of negative pi over 3. So that's in the 4th quadrant. That means sine is going to be negative. Did I draw that right? I hope I did. Oh, going off of memory here. So sine of pi over 3 is square root of 3 over 2. So that would be the answer here. Okay, so the first one says you rewrite. So over here I could just write sine of negative pi over 3. And I'm pretty sure I could put, well, I'm going to leave it. I'm not sure if we should put in negative 2 pi over 6 or negative pi over 3. We'll see if it gets that right. And then down here, they want the answer. So negative square root of 3 divided by 2. Okay. I'm going to pause for just a second. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Question number 2, determine the specific solutions, if any, to the equation on the interval. So we got to solve this problem. So let me see. Number 1, number 2. So cosine of 2 theta plus 2 is equal to 5 times sine theta. Well, they're not the same trig function, so I'm going to have to rewrite one of them. And then I'm going to get my formula sheet back out. So cosine 2 theta can be rewritten as 1 minus 2 sine squared theta plus 2 is equal to 5 times sine theta. And this is where we can use substitution property. So sine theta, I'm going to let that be x. I'm going to rewrite this. This is 1 minus 2x squared plus 2 is equal to 5x. And if I bring everything to one side, I'm going to go this way, so it'll be positive. So it becomes positive 2x squared plus 5x. 1 plus 2 is 3, but I moved it over, so it became negative 3, is equal to 0. So then you just do magic x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And 5 multiplies to give me negative 6, but adds to give me 5. It would be 6 and negative 1, but I got to come back and divide by 2. So this is 3. So I have x plus 3 and 2x minus 1 equals 0. This one's going to be too big to use. But right here I have x is equal to 1/2. So technically sine of theta is equal to 1/2. Whoops, sorry, I can't see. Sine of theta is equal to 1/2. So then you have to decide sine is positive here and here. So where does sine of theta equal 1/2? Well, back to my perfect triangle up here, sine would be pi over 6. So right here, it's a pi over 6 angle, and right here, it's 1 less, so that would be pi over 6. So your two answers are pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. So that goes right here. Pi over 6, 5 pi over 6. Okay. Next. All right, this is another one, but it's one where it broke it up into two parts. So let me scroll up my notepad again for y'all. Okay, so this time I have cosine theta is equal to -1 over square root of 2. So this is a pi over 4 angle, but it's cosine and it's negative. So cosine is negative in quadrant 2. All students take calculus in quadrant 3. And I know that theta has to be a pi over 4 angle. So the pi over 4 angle right here is 3 pi over 4. Pi over 4 angle right here is 5 pi over 4. So the first part, remember you're adding your period. You have two of them, two equations. We got pi is equal to 3 pi over 4 plus 2 pi k. And theta is equal to 5 pi over 4 plus 2 pi k. So that's part A. Go ahead and type that in real quick. 3 pi over 2 pi k and 5 pi over 2 pi k. But my answers, the only two that are on the interval 2 pi are those two, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4. Okay, remember, if it lands on one of the axes, you can probably just use one equation instead of two because you can just add pi. And if it's tangent, you can just add pi, but I'm sure they'll have one here and we'll go over it. Okay, so next for that one, switch my notebook around. 4. Okay, so pose, I might have to move this down a little bit. Okay, suppose the triple side of angle A is in quadrant 1 and beta is in quadrant 4. If sine is that, so find the exact value of cosine alpha plus beta. So let me get my thing out. Cosine of alpha plus beta is equal to cosine of alpha, cosine of beta, minus sine of alpha, sine of beta. Okay, so I already know sine of alpha and cosine of beta, but I gotta find the other two. Okay, so I know that cosine of beta, this one right here, is 2 square root of 29. And I know that sine of alpha is 4 over 5. But I gotta find sine of beta and cosine of alpha. So it tells you the quadrant. So alpha is in quadrant 1, that means they're both positive, right? And we've got sine of alpha is 4 over 5. So you gotta find the other side thing. So 25 minus 16 should be 9. And the square root of that is 3. So cosine of alpha is 3 over 5. Okay, and then they say that B lies in quadrant 4, so I'm going to just use it right here, but it's down here. And that cosine is 2 over square root of 29. Well, now I know that this one is going to be negative, so sine is going to be negative over there. So let's see, 29 minus 4 is 25, square root of that is 5. So then we got negative 5 over square root of 29. So over here they ask for the formula. So it's cosine of alpha, cosine of beta, sine of alpha, sine of beta, this one. And then looks like they just want us to plug them in. So I'm going to have to do all the work here. 3/5, 2 divided by square root of 29 minus 4/5 and -5 divided by square root of 29. And there you go. That's it. Sorry, I accidentally zoomed in. All right. Question number 5. All right, determine the specific solutions, if any, to the equation. Okay, so this is another solving one. Cosine squared of theta is equal to 3/4. Let me look at my formula sheet. Yeah, so we just got to solve this one. So I need cosine to be by itself. So to do that, I would take the square root of both sides. So that means cosine is equal to the square root of 3/2. So when does that happen? If we go back to our pi/6 triangle, cosine would be pi/6. So this happens at our pi/6 angle, so we get square root of 3/2. Ooh, you know what though? When you're solving and you take the square root of something, you get plus or minus. So I wonder if we need all of them. So it would be all of our answers. I'm pretty sure it's plus or minus because when you square something, you get the positive of it anyway. So it's going to happen at all 4 of them, all 4 pi/6 angles. So this is pi/6, 5 pi/6, 7 pi/6, and 11 pi/6. So we'll come back and check this one after the test is over to make sure, but I think it's all 4 and not just the positive ones, because when you're solving and you take the square root of something, you have to do plus or minus. That's when it's positive and when it's negative. So I'm going to type that in. pi/6. 5 pi/6. 7 pi/6. And 11 pi/6. Okay. Number 6. Okay, so this is, let me see, sine of theta over 1 minus cosine theta. And I'm just going to write that part for now because y'all can see it on the screen, multiple choice. So basically, what it did, and I can tell by looking at the screen what it did, is it multiplied by the conjugate. So, because to get a 1 plus cosine up here, that means that's what I had to multiply by. So I'm looking for the one, I'm going to take off equals, that did 1 plus cosine of theta at the top and the bottom. So I already know A is wrong and B is wrong. So my choices are narrowed down to C and D. So what happens when we multiply by the conjugate? Well, over here, I should get 1 minus cosine squared theta. And at the top, I should get sine theta hang on. I lost my video because my low battery. It doesn't, they didn't even multiply it, so 1 plus cosine. So that eliminates D because they have a 1 plus instead of a 1 minus. So I know my answer is C. Now, how they got to the last step, you don't even have to figure out because you know that this times this equals this right here. So it has to be C. Okay, hang on guys, because it says my phone is on low battery. And I just need to charge it, which I thought it was plugged in. Let me pause it for a second. Oh, I can't. Bear with me. Okay, it's charging. Trying to get this all set up right quick. I'm sorry I'm wasting your video time. Just fast forward me. Okay, number 7. All right, use a half angle formula. So I have cosine of negative 7 pi over 8. I'm looking for my half angle formula. So what is the measure of the half angle? Well, this is the half angle. So negative 7 pi over 8. So what would the measure of that be? So basically you're multiplying by 2. So negative 7 pi over 8 times 2 is negative 14 pi over 8, but that simplifies to negative 7 pi over 4. So that's alpha. Okay, where does the terminal side of the half angle lie? So 7 pi over 8 is in quadrant 2. Cosine is negative in this quadrant. So the negative is 1 plus cosine over 2, but it's got to be the negative 1. So this one. So we just got to plug it in. Our alpha was negative 7 pi over 4. So basically, you just got to find cosine of negative 7 pi over 4 so that we can plug it into this formula because it's going to be 1 plus whatever we have. So cosine negative 7 pi over 4 would be going down. So it would be almost all the way back around. So it would be here. Hang on, negative 7 over 8 is actually, okay, hang on. I'm just going to continue doing this so we can figure this. So it's positive, basically. And cosine of that is 1 over square root of 2. But I think I did this wrong up here. Hang on. My double angle is negative 7 pi over 8. So the terminal, I did it as if it was positive 7. It's actually in quadrant 3. But cosine is still negative, so that only changed that one part. So there we go. 1 divided by square root of 2. All right, number 8. I'll go wrong right here. Okay, cosine of 5 pi. And if like these are questions you know how to do, you can just fast forward and skip and watch what you need to watch. Okay, use the cosine and the sum of two angles formulas to determine. So basically, I want this to be cosine of alpha plus beta. because it says sum of two angles formula. So I'm looking for two numbers that can add to give me 5. So the two that I automatically think of is 2/12 plus 3/12. Okay, so both of these simplify to be pi/6 plus pi/4. So basically that's my alpha and beta. Okay, well, my sum of difference formula is cosine of alpha, cosine of beta, minus, I can't write, so I'm going to move it over, sine of alpha, sine of beta. Okay, so we're looking for cosine of pi/6 times cosine of pi/4, and then sine of pi/6 and sine of pi/4. Both of them are in quadrant 1, so everything's going to be positive. Okay, these are both 1/√2. And again, using your perfect triangle. Let me move it over so y'all can see. Okay, this one's square root of 3, 1 and 2. Cosine of pi/6 is square root of 3/2. Sine of pi/6 is 1/2. So I got 1 times square root of 3 is square root of 3, minus 1 times 1 is 1, over the denominator is 2, square root of 2. So that's our answer for that one. Square root of 3 minus 1. Computer's being silly. Number 9. Okay, so they gave us tangent of beta over cosine of beta plus cosine of beta over tangent of beta. And you basically got to decide what to do. Well, I can't add two things unless they have common denominators. So the first thing I would be doing would be multiplying this side by tangent, both the top and the bottom, and this side by cosine, both the top and the bottom. Okay, and what that gives me at the top is tangent squared of beta plus cosine squared of beta. And at the bottom, they would have a common denominator of cosine beta, tangent beta. Okay, so both B and C say that. So we can automatically cross out A. It's not that one. So then we just got to decide where to go from here. Well, these are two Pythagorean identities. So you're basically just checking to see which one rewrites it correctly. Okay, so your Pythagorean identities are not on your formula sheet. But the one that I do know, I'll write down, is I know that sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. So if I had cosine squared theta has to equal 1 minus sine squared theta. So I know that this guy has to be rewritten to this. And we already marked A out. So from B and C, the one that does minus sign is B. So our answer is B. I hope that made sense to you guys. Okay, number 10. All right, suppose the terminal side of A. Okay, so it wants us to find sine of alpha plus beta. Alpha plus beta is sine of alpha cosine of beta plus cosine of alpha sine of beta. So I know that sine of alpha is 15/17. And I know that cosine of beta is 3/√11. To find the other two, we got to draw these triangles. So alpha, again, is in quadrant 1. Okay, and sine is 15 over 17. So 17 squared minus 15 squared is 64. So that means that this is 8. So cosine of alpha is 8 over 17. And then beta is in quadrant 4, so it's down here. And cosine of beta is 3 over square root of 11. So 11 minus 9 is 2. So this is the square root of 2, and it's negative because it's going down. So sine of beta is negative square root of 2 over square root of 11. Oh, sorry, I can't really see that. Let me scroll up so y'all could see. Okay, and so you just got to plug these in. So first, pick the correct formula. Cosine of alpha should be a plus. And you have your formula sheet, so at least this part you should be able to get right on the test. And then these, we can just make sure you click on the right one. See, I almost did the wrong one. I need the plus sign in there. So this is 15 over 17. And then 3 divided by, oops. Come on, computer. Square root of 11. Right here would be 8 over 17. And negative square root of 2 divided by square root of 11. And there you go. That's that. Okay, number 11. I've got 2 cosine squared theta plus cosine theta equals 0. So in this problem, our cosine theta is x. Okay, so this would be the same thing as 2x plus x is equal to 0. So there's an x in common, so factor that out. We got 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. So x equals 0, and x equals negative 1/2. So basically, where does cosine theta equal 0? And where does cosine theta equal negative 1/2? Okay, so let's start with this one. And I'm kind of out of paper room. Let's see if I can squeeze it in there. So cosine is 0. Cosine is the same thing as x. So where does x equal 0? That's here and here. So my first one is pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So that's 2 solutions. Then where does cosine equal 1/2? Well, that is a pi over 3 angle, but it's negative. So hang on, guys, I gotta see. Okay, cosine is negative also in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. And it's a pi over 3 angle. So this is 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. My phone did low battery again, I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna pause after this one and then just come back and finish the video for y'all later. So my answers are pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi over 3, and 4 pi over 3. Okay, so pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi over 3, and 4 pi over 3. Number 12. Sine squared theta minus 7 sine theta minus 4 equals 0. This is the same kind of problem except we got sine. So sine theta is now your x. So we got x squared minus 7x minus 4 equals 0. So negative 4 and negative 7. Oh, 2. missed the 2. I'm like, I can't do that. -8 and -7. That makes more sense. So -8 and 1 divided by 2 divided by 2. So this one we can't use because it's bigger than 4. So we've got 2x plus 1 equals 0. That means x is equal to -1/2. That means sine theta is equal to -1/2. So it's -1/2. Sine is, that should be a pi/6 angle. But it's when sine is negative, so that's here and here. 5 pi/6 and 11 pi/6 would be your answers for that one. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to pause here, and I'll come back later tonight and finish it. You probably won't even know. I'll probably actually just have to post 2 separate videos. Okay, sorry.